He thought silence would make her stay. He thought distance would make her chase him harder. He thought love was something he could turn on and off, like the lights in their penthouse overlooking Manhattan. But the night Evelyn Carter stopped calling was the night he lost everything, and she never looked back. The city was glowing beneath them. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Manhattan penthouse, New York looked infinite, alive, restless, untouchable. The kind of view people envied. The kind of life people assumed was perfect. Evelyn Carter stood barefoot on the marble floor, a glass of untouched wine in her hand. She hadn't moved in 10 minutes. Not since Ryan spoke. "From now on," he said, adjusting his cufflinks as if the conversation meant nothing, "I'll decide when we talk." His voice wasn't loud. It never was. That was what made it worse. Evelyn turned slowly. "What does that even mean?" Ryan glanced at her briefly, then back at his reflection in the mirror. "It means I'm tired of unnecessary conversations." "Unnecessary?" Her laugh was quiet, almost fragile. "We barely talk as it is. That's because most of what you say doesn't need to be said." The words landed without force, but they cut deeper than shouting ever could. Evelyn swallowed, gripping the glass tighter. "So what? I just wait until you decide I'm allowed to exist again." Ryan sighed, like she was exhausting him. "You're being dramatic. I'm being human." He finally turned, his expression calm, controlled, unchanged. "Then stop chasing me." Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Evelyn felt something inside her crack, not loudly, not all at once, but quietly, like ice beginning to give way beneath weight. "I'm your wife," she said softly. "And I provide for you," Ryan replied. "Let's not complicate things." There it was. The transaction. Not love, not partnership. Just arrangement. Evelyn nodded slowly, as if accepting something she had always known but never wanted to name. "Okay," she whispered. Ryan didn't notice the difference in her tone. He had already moved on, picking up his watch, checking his phone, stepping back into this world where everything obeyed him. Everything. Except her. Later that night, Evelyn lay awake in their bed, staring at the ceiling. Ryan slept beside her, undisturbed. His breathing steady, his presence distant even in inches. She turned her head slightly, watching him. There was a time when she memorized his face, the curve of his jaw, the way his eyes softened when he smiled. Now, she searched for that version of him and found nothing. When did it change? Or had it always been like this, and she was just too in love to see it? Her phone lit up softly on the nightstand. A message. Unknown number. She hesitated, then reached for it. "You looked like you needed air tonight." Evelyn frowned, sitting up slightly. Another message followed. Gallery opening. "You were standing by the exit for 10 minutes. Most people don't notice things like that." "I do." Her heart skipped. She typed back before she could overthink it. "Do I know you?" The reply came almost instantly. "Not yet." Evelyn stared at the screen. For the first time in a long time, something stirred inside her. Not love, not even attraction, just awareness. Of herself, of being seen. She glanced back at Ryan, still asleep, still unreachable. Then back at her phone. "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "Someone who noticed you were invisible." Evelyn's breath caught. Invisible. The word echoed louder than anything Ryan had ever said. She didn't reply again. Instead, she turned off the screen and lay back down, her mind restless. But sleep didn't come, because for the first time, she wasn't waiting for Ryan to speak. Morning arrived quietly, too quietly. Evelyn woke to the pale gray light filtering through the curtains, the city still stretching itself awake beneath the skyline. For a brief second, she forgot. There was a softness in that moment, a fragile illusion that things were normal. Then she turned. The other side of the bed was empty, cold. Ryan was already gone. No note, no message, not even the faint sound of him moving around the apartment earlier. It was as if he had never been there at all. Evelyn sat up slowly, pulling the sheets closer around her. Her eyes drifted toward his nightstand, clean, untouched, methodical. Everything in its place. Always. Except her. By the time she stepped into the kitchen, dressed in a tailored cream blouse and black trousers, the apartment looked pristine. The housekeeper must have already come and gone. On the counter, there was a single cup of coffee, Not fresh, not warm, just there, prepared hours ago, left behind, like an afterthought. Evelyn stared at it for a long moment before picking it up. The bitterness hit her tongue immediately, sharp and unpleasant. She didn't drink another sip. At the law firm, everything felt easier, predictable, controlled. Evelyn Carter was respected here, needed. Her voice carried weight in conference rooms filled with men twice her age. Clients listened when she spoke. Judges nodded. Here, she existed. Great work on the Halpern case, her colleague Daniel said as he walked beside her. You practically dismantled their entire argument. Evelyn smiled faintly. That's the job. No, he said, shaking his head. That's talent. She nodded politely, but his words barely registered. Compliments felt distant lately, like they were meant for someone else, someone she used to be. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She froze. For a split second, something inside her reacted. Hope, instinct, something automatic. Ryan. It had to be him. Finally, she glanced down. Unknown number. Her chest tightened in a way she didn't expect. You didn't reply. Evelyn's fingers hovered over the screen. She should ignore it. She knew she should, but she didn't. I don't usually text strangers. A pause. Then maybe we shouldn't be strangers. She exhaled slowly, her pulse unsteady. You still haven't told me who you are. This time, the reply took longer. Julian. Just a name. No last name. No explanation. But somehow, it felt intentional. Evelyn locked her phone and slipped it into her bag, as if hiding something dangerous, or something fragile. That evening, Ryan was home. Sitting in the living room, laptop open, glass of whiskey in hand. The soft glow of the screen illuminated his face, sharp and distant. Evelyn paused near the doorway. Hey, she said gently. No response. She stepped closer. Ryan. He glanced up briefly. You're back. It wasn't a question, it wasn't warmth, just acknowledgement. I called you this morning, she said. Twice. I was busy. I figured, she replied, swallowing. I just thought. You thought I'd drop everything to answer. The words were flat, not angry, not emotional, just final. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. No. I just thought you might call back. Ryan took a sip of his drink, eyes returning to the screen. If it was important, you would have left a message. I did. He didn't respond. Didn't even look up. And that was it. The conversation ended before it ever really began. Dinner was silent. The kind of silence that pressed against her chest, made every movement feel too loud. The clink of utensils, the shift of a chair, the sound of her own breathing. Ryan ate methodically, eyes occasionally drifting to his phone. Evelyn watched him. Not openly, not obviously, but carefully. Studying him the way one studies something they no longer understand. Did something happen today? She asked finally. Ryan didn't look up. No. You seem distant. I'm working. At the dinner table. That's where I am. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. There was no space for her here. Not anymore. That night she didn't go to bed right away. Instead, Evelyn stood by the window again, looking out over the city. Lights flickered in distant buildings. Other lives. Other conversations. Other people who still spoke to each other. Her phone buzzed again. She hesitated, then picked it up. Julian. Are you always this quiet? Evelyn stared at the message, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. She typed. Deleted. Typed again. Only when no one is listening. The reply came quickly this time. I'm listening. Her breath caught. 3 simple words, but they landed heavier than anything Ryan had said in weeks. Evelyn leaned her forehead lightly against the cool glass. I shouldn't be doing this, she whispered to herself. But she didn't stop. Why? She typed. A pause. Then, because people who go quiet like you usually have something important to say. Evelyn closed her eyes, and for a moment, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like possibility. Behind her, Ryan walked into the room. She didn't hear him at first, didn't notice his presence until his voice cut through the air. Who are you texting? Evelyn turned, her heart skipping. No one. Ryan's eyes lingered on her, unreadable. Then why do you look like that? Like what? Like you're somewhere else. The question hung between them. Evelyn hesitated. Then, softly, maybe I am. Something shifted in Ryan's expression. Subtle. Dangerous. But he said nothing. Just watched her. And in that silence, Evelyn realized something terrifying. Ryan didn't need to raise his voice. Didn't need to argue. Didn't need to fight. Because silence, his silence, was already winning. It was shrinking her, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to fight for. Later, lying beside him in the dark, Evelyn stared at the ceiling again. But this time, the question was different. Not when did he change, but when did I start disappearing? Her phone rested beneath her pillow, silent, but no longer empty, and for the first time, Evelyn wondered what would happen if she stopped waiting altogether. The message came the next afternoon. Evelyn was sitting in her office, sunlight slicing across her desk in sharp, golden lines. Papers were neatly stacked, her calendar filled down to the minute, meetings, calls, deadlines. Her life, on paper, was perfectly structured. Inside, it felt like static. Her phone buzzed once. She didn't reach for it immediately. That was new. For years, every notification had triggered the same reflex, hope, followed by quiet disappointment. But now, she let it sit there, vibrating softly against the polished wood. Then, slowly, she picked it up. Julian. There's a small gallery opening tonight in Soho, 7 p.m. You don't have to talk. You can just exist. Evelyn stared at the message longer than necessary. No pressure. No expectations. Just an invitation. Her fingers hovered over the screen. I don't think that's a good idea. She pressed send before she could second-guess it. The reply didn't come right away. Minutes passed. Then, that's okay. A pause. But you still thought about it. Evelyn exhaled slowly, leaning back in her chair. He wasn't wrong. She told herself she wouldn't go. She repeated it in her head while she finished her work, while she shut down her computer, while she rode the elevator down to the lobby. She even repeated it as she stepped out onto the street. But when she got into the car, she didn't say home. Instead, she gave the driver an address she hadn't planned on visiting. The gallery was understated. No flashing signs, no crowd spilling onto the street, just a soft glow behind tall glass windows and the quiet hum of conversation inside. Evelyn hesitated at the entrance. This wasn't her world. She dealt in contracts, negotiations, controlled outcomes, not abstract art and unspoken meanings. For a moment she almost turned away. Then she remembered Ryan's voice. Stop chasing me. Her jaw tightened, and she stepped inside. The space was warm, filled with muted colors and quiet energy. Paintings lined the walls, some chaotic, others hauntingly still. People moved slowly, wine glasses in hand, speaking in low tones, like they were afraid to disturb something fragile. Evelyn stayed near the entrance, observing, invisible, just like she was used to. You came. The voice was soft, close, but not intrusive. Evelyn turned. Julian Hayes looked exactly how she imagined, and nothing like she expected. He wasn't polished like Ryan. No tailored suit, no calculated presence. Instead, he wore a simple black shirt, sleeves rolled up, a camera strap hanging loosely around his neck. His eyes, though, they didn't scan her. They saw her. I almost didn't, Evelyn admitted. Julian nodded, like that made perfect sense. But you did. There was no smile of victory, no sense of accomplishment, just quiet acknowledgement. Evelyn crossed her arms lightly. So, you just invite strangers to galleries now? Only the ones who look like they're trying to breathe, he replied. Her chest tightened unexpectedly. That obvious? Only if you're paying attention. A small silence settled between them. But it wasn't heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It just existed. They walked slowly through the gallery. Not side by side, not quite apart either. Julian didn't fill the space with unnecessary conversation. He didn't ask invasive questions or try to impress her. He simply stayed present. At one point, Evelyn stopped in front of a painting. It was abstract, dark strokes layered over pale ones, like something struggling to surface but never quite breaking through. What do you see? Julian asked. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. It feels trapped. Julian glanced at her, Not at the painting. Yeah. She looked at him. That's it? Just, yeah. He shrugged lightly. I'm more interested in why you saw that. Evelyn hesitated, then shook her head. I don't know. But she did. She just wasn't ready to say it out loud. They ended up sitting in a quiet corner, away from the small crowd. 2 glasses of wine sat untouched between them. You didn't answer my question, Evelyn said after a while. Julian looked at her. Which one? Why me? It came out softer than she intended, more vulnerable. Julian didn't answer immediately. He leaned back slightly, studying her, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that felt careful. Because you looked like someone who's been quiet for too long, he said finally. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. That's not a reason, she whispered. It is to me. She let out a small, humorless laugh. You don't even know me. Then tell me something. The invitation hung in the air. Simple, open, dangerous. Evelyn looked down at her hands. I'm married. Julian nodded. No surprise. No judgment. I figured. That caught her off guard. You did. You have that look. What look? Like you're loyal to something that's already gone. Her breath hitched. For a second, she couldn't speak. Because he wasn't guessing. He was right. I should go, Evelyn said suddenly, standing up. It was too much. Too fast. Too real. Julian didn't try to stop her. Okay. She blinked. That's it. He gave a small shrug. I'm not here to chase you. The words hit differently coming from him. Not cold. Not dismissive. Just honest. Evelyn hesitated, her heart unsteady. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not asking for more. Julian nodded once. You don't owe me anything. And somehow, that made it harder to leave. Outside, the night air felt cooler, sharper. Evelyn stood on the sidewalk for a moment, trying to steady herself. Her phone buzzed. She looked down. Julian, you don't have to disappear after tonight. She stared at the message, then typed slowly. I don't know what I'm doing. The reply came almost instantly. Neither do I. A pause. That's why it's real. Evelyn's chest tightened again. But this time, it wasn't from pain. It was something unfamiliar. Something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. When she got home, the apartment was dark. Ryan wasn't there. No message. No explanation. Just absence. Evelyn stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. For once, she didn't feel the urge to fill the silence. Didn't feel the need to call him, to ask where he was, to make herself small enough to fit into whatever space he allowed her. Instead, she walked to the window, looked out at the city, and breathed. Her phone rested in her hand. Not as a lifeline, not as a hope, just something she could choose to use, or not. And for the first time in a long time, Evelyn Carter didn't feel invisible. It didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment Evelyn Carter could point to and say, this is where I betrayed my marriage. Instead, it unfolded slowly, quietly, like everything else in her life. The messages became routine. Not constant, not obsessive, but consistent. Julian never overwhelmed her, never demanded attention. His presence existed in small, deliberate moments, like a steady pulse beneath the surface of her days. Did you eat? You sounded tired earlier. There's a place near the river you might like. Simple things. Things Ryan had stopped asking a long time ago. Evelyn told herself it was harmless. Just conversation. Just being seen. Weeks passed. Spring began softening the edges of the city, replacing the cold sharpness of winter with something warmer, more forgiving. The streets felt different, alive in a way that made people linger a little longer, breathe a little deeper. Evelyn noticed it. Or maybe, she noticed herself noticing it. She was sitting across from Julian now, in a quiet cafe tucked between 2 narrow streets in Brooklyn. It wasn't a place she would have chosen on her own, too small, too unpolished, too real. You always look like you're about to leave, Julian said, watching her over the rim of his coffee cup. Evelyn blinked. Do I? He nodded. Like you're waiting for someone to tell you it's time. Her lips curved slightly, but there was no humor in it. Maybe I am. Julian leaned back in his chair. And what happens if no one tells you? Evelyn hesitated.
I wouldn't know what to do. Then maybe that's the problem. His words weren't harsh, but they stayed with her.
Ryan didn't ask where she had been. That night, when she returned home, later than usual, he was sitting in the living room again. Same position, same glass of whiskey, same distant expression. "You're late," he said without looking up. "I had work," Evelyn replied automatically. A lie, but not one he cared enough to question. That was all. No curiosity, no suspicion, no concern, just acknowledgement. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. It was a Thursday when everything shifted. Not dramatically, not obviously, just undeniably. Evelyn stood in Julian's studio for the first time, her arms wrapped loosely around herself as she took in the space. It was cluttered, but intentional. Photographs pinned to walls, half-finished prints scattered across tables, light filtering in through tall windows in uneven patterns. It felt alive. "You don't like it," Julian said from behind her. She turned quickly. "No, I do. It's just different from what you're used to." Evelyn nodded. "Good," he said simply. She frowned slightly. "Good?" Julian stepped closer, not too close, just enough to shift the air between them. "You've been living in something that doesn't feel like you," he said. "Different might be exactly what you need." Her breath caught. It wasn't what he said. It was how easily he said it. Like it was obvious. Like she was obvious. They talked for hours. About nothing. About everything. About the small things that somehow felt bigger than the life she had been living, music, places they'd never been, moments that didn't fit into neat categories. Evelyn laughed. Softly at first. Then without thinking. And the sound startled her. Because she couldn't remember the last time it came so easily. "You're different here," Julian said quietly. She looked at him. "How? You don't look like you're trying to be someone else." The words settled deep, dangerously deep. Evelyn looked away, her chest tightening. "I don't know who I am anymore," she admitted. Julian didn't respond right away. Instead, he stepped closer, closer than before. Close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, steady and unintrusive. "You don't have to figure it out all at once," he said softly. Her heartbeat quickened, not from fear, not entirely. "Then what do I do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian's gaze held hers. "Start with what feels real." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full, heavy with something unspoken, something inevitable. Evelyn didn't move away. That was the moment. Not a touch, not a kiss, just the absence of distance. Her mind was loud with reasons. "This is wrong. You're married. You should leave." But her body, her heart, stayed exactly where they were. When Julian finally reached for her, it wasn't sudden. It wasn't forceful. It was careful. Like he was giving her time to stop him. She didn't. His fingers brushed against her hand first, light, almost hesitant. And that was enough to undo her. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, her breath uneven. "Evelyn," he murmured. Not a question, not permission, just her name. And somehow, that made it harder to resist. The kiss, when it came, was quiet. Not urgent, not consuming. Just real. And that was what broke her. Because there was no manipulation, no control, no expectation. Just two people standing in a moment they both understood, and chose anyway. Evelyn pulled back first, her breathing uneven, her thoughts colliding all at once. "I can't," she started, shaking her head slightly. Julian didn't try to stop her, didn't argue, didn't reach for her again. "Okay," he said simply. That word again. No pressure, no guilt, just space. Evelyn turned away, running a hand through her hair. "This isn't me," she whispered. Julian's voice was calm behind her, or maybe it is. She froze. "I'm married," she said again, like saying it enough times would anchor her back to something solid. "And are you happy?" he asked quietly. The question hit harder than it should have, because she didn't have an answer. Or worse, she did. That night, she went home. She expected to feel consumed by guilt, overwhelmed, destroyed by what had just happened. But instead, she felt something else, something unfamiliar, light. Ryan was asleep when she entered the bedroom, unaware, unchanged, untouched by anything that had shifted inside her. Evelyn stood there for a long moment, watching him. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she was the one betraying something. It felt like she had been abandoned long before this moment ever existed. She slipped into bed beside him, careful not to wake him. Her body still carried the memory of something real, something honest, something she hadn't felt in years. Evelyn stared at the ceiling. But this time the silence didn't suffocate her. It didn't shrink her. It didn't make her disappear, because somewhere along the line, crossing the line didn't feel like falling. It felt like breathing. It started with something small. It always did. Evelyn was reviewing documents at the dining table, her laptop open, notes scattered neatly around her. Outside, the city hummed with its usual rhythm, cars, voices, life continuing without pause. Inside, everything felt still. Her phone buzzed softly beside her. She didn't need to look. She knew who it was. And that alone made her hesitate. For a moment, she just stared at the screen as it lit up. Julian, I saw something today that reminded me of you. Her fingers hovered. A part of her wanted to respond immediately, to step back into that quiet space where she felt real. But another part, the part shaped by years of conditioning, paused, listened, waited. Who keeps texting you? Ryan's voice cut through the silence without warning. Evelyn looked up sharply. He was standing near the doorway, jacket still on, his presence filling the room in a way that immediately shifted the air. I didn't hear you come in, she said. That wasn't my question. His tone wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Evelyn closed her laptop slowly. It's work. Ryan's eyes flicked to her phone, then back to her face. You've been getting a lot of work messages lately. Her chest tightened. It's a busy time. Ryan stepped closer, his movements calm, controlled, too controlled. Let me see. The words weren't a request. They never were. Evelyn's hand instinctively moved toward her phone, her fingers curling slightly around it. Why? She asked, her voice quieter than she intended. Ryan tilted his head, studying her. That's new. What is? You asking questions. The air shifted again, subtly, dangerously. I'm your husband, Ryan continued, his voice steady. I shouldn't have to explain why. Evelyn felt something inside her tighten. Not fear, not exactly. Something sharper. Something that had been building for a long time. That's not an answer, she said. Ryan's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with something colder. Expectation. You're acting different, he said. Maybe I am. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Silence followed. But this silence wasn't his. It wasn't controlled. It was fragile. Ryan took another step closer. Different how? Evelyn swallowed, her heart beating faster. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe I'm just tired. Of what? She hesitated. Then, this. The word hung in the air between them, undefined, but understood. Ryan let out a quiet breath, setting his keys down with deliberate care. You have everything, he said. This apartment, your career, stability. What exactly are you tired of? Evelyn stared at him, and suddenly, she saw it. Not just who he was, but how he saw her. Not as a person, not as someone with needs, with emotions, with limits, but as something. Contained, maintained, owned. I'm tired of feeling like I don't exist unless you decide I do, she said, her voice steady now. Ryan's expression didn't change. If anything, it became calmer. Colder. That's dramatic. No, Evelyn replied softly. It's honest. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension between them wasn't explosive. It was controlled, measured. Like a line neither of them had crossed before. You're my wife, Ryan said finally. The words landed with quiet authority. And what does that mean to you? Evelyn asked. Ryan didn't hesitate. It means we have an understanding. Her stomach tightened. An understanding. Yes. His voice was firm now. I provide. I protect. And in return, you don't question me. You don't create unnecessary problems. You don't drift. The last word lingered, heavy, accusing. Evelyn felt her pulse in her throat. Drift? She repeated. Ryan's gaze sharpened slightly. You've been distracted. Or maybe I've just been awake. The moment the words left her mouth, something shifted, irreversibly. Ryan took a step closer, close enough that she could see every detail in his expression. You're overthinking things, he said. That's always been your problem. Evelyn let out a quiet breath. No, she said. I think my problem is that I stopped thinking a long time ago. That landed. Not loudly, but deeply. Ryan's jaw tightened slightly. Is there someone else? The question came suddenly. Sharp. Direct. Evelyn's heart skipped, but her face stayed calm. No, it wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. And for the first time, she didn't feel the need to explain. Ryan watched her for a long moment, searching, calculating. But whatever he was looking for, he didn't find it, because Evelyn wasn't reacting the way she used to. She wasn't rushing to reassure him, wasn't shrinking under his gaze, wasn't chasing. Good, he said finally, stepping back. Just like that, the tension dissolved, or rather, he chose to end it. As if it had never been real. Evelyn stood there, unmoving, watching him walk away, return to his glass of whiskey, to his world, to his control. And something inside her became very clear. It wasn't about another person. It wasn't about Julian. It wasn't even about love anymore. It was about this. Ryan didn't love her, not in the way she understood love. To him, love wasn't connection. It wasn't vulnerability. It wasn't choice. It was ownership. And in that moment, Evelyn realized something that both terrified and freed her at the same time. She had been trying to earn something that was never meant to be given. Later that night, she stood in the bedroom, staring at her reflection. She looked the same. Same face, same posture, same life. But something behind her eyes had changed. Her phone buzzed softly on the dresser. She didn't reach for it immediately, didn't rush, didn't react. Instead, she walked closer to the mirror, studied herself, really studied herself. Who are you? She whispered. The question felt different this time. Not lost, not desperate, just necessary. After a long moment, she picked up her phone. A message from Julian. You okay? Evelyn stared at the screen, then typed slowly. I think I understand something now. A pause. Then, what? She looked at her reflection one last time. Her voice was steady when she whispered the answer, even though she didn't send it. I don't belong to him. Instead, she typed something else, something simpler. I'll be okay. She placed the phone down, turned off the light, and lay beside Ryan in the dark. But this time, she wasn't waiting. She wasn't hoping. She wasn't trying to fix anything. Because somewhere, deep beneath the silence, Evelyn Carter had already made her decision. And Ryan, he just didn't know it yet. It happened on a Tuesday. No storm, no argument, no final explosion to justify it. Just quiet. Ryan left early that morning, like he always did. A brief glance, a few distracted movements, the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the air long after the door closed behind him. Evelyn stood in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around the cup of coffee she hadn't touched. She listened, to the silence, to the absence, to the life that no longer felt like hers. She didn't cry. That was the strangest part. No dramatic realization, no breaking down, just clarity, cold, steady, unshakable. Evelyn walked back into the bedroom, opened the closet, and paused. Rows of carefully selected dresses, shoes lined in perfect order, handbags placed like artifacts of a life curated for appearance. She reached out, her fingers brushing lightly over the fabric. This was who she had been, or at least who she had tried to be. She didn't pack everything. That would have meant something, would have made it feel like a departure. Instead, she chose deliberately a few essentials, a suitcase no larger than necessary, clothes that felt like her, not like expectations, her passport, her laptop, nothing sentimental, nothing tied to him. On the nightstand, her wedding ring rested where she had left it hours earlier. She picked it up, held it between her fingers. For a moment, memories flickered, laughter, promises, a version of Ryan that might have existed once, or maybe never did. Then she placed the ring back down, Not violently, not symbolically, just, gently, like something that no longer belonged to her. There was no note, no message, no explanation, because what was there left to say? Ryan had never asked the right questions, and she was done giving answers no one listened to. By the time the city was fully awake, Evelyn Carter was gone. Ryan didn't notice at first, not immediately. His day unfolded as usual. Meetings, calls, decisions made with precision and control. Everything in its place, everything predictable. It wasn't until late afternoon that something felt off. A message he sent went unanswered. Unusual, but not alarming. Not yet. By evening, the silence stretched longer than expected. Ryan stood in the living room, phone in hand, staring at the screen. No reply, no missed calls, nothing. Evelyn? Her name echoed into the empty apartment as he stepped inside. The space felt different, not messy, not disturbed, just still. He moved through the room slowly. Bedroom, bathroom, closet, and then he saw it. The empty space, subtle, but unmistakable. Not everything was gone. That would have been easier to process, easier to categorize. No, she had taken just enough to make it clear. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't temporary. Ryan's jaw tightened. He picked up his phone, dialing her number. It rang. Once. Twice. Then voicemail. He hung up. Dialed again. Same result. A flicker of something unfamiliar surfaced beneath his calm exterior. Not panic, not yet. Something closer to irritation. He walked back into the bedroom. His eyes landed on the nightstand. The ring. For a moment, he just stared at it, unmoving, unblinking. Then, slowly, he picked it up, turned it between his fingers, as if examining something that didn't make sense. She wouldn't, he murmured under his breath, but the words lacked conviction, because she already had. Across the city, in a place Ryan would never think to look, Evelyn sat by a window, watching the sky shift into evening. The apartment was small, unremarkable, temporary, but it was quiet. Not the suffocating silence she had left behind. A different kind. One that didn't demand anything from her. Her phone lay on the table beside her. Dozens of missed calls. Messages. All from Ryan. She didn't open them. Didn't read a single word. Instead, she stared out the window. Breathing. Just breathing. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Soft. Measured. Evelyn hesitated before standing. She already knew who it was. When she opened the door, Julian stood there. No surprise in his expression. No questions, just presence. You disappeared, he said quietly. Evelyn leaned against the doorframe slightly. So did I. Julian studied her face. Not searching, not judging, just seeing. Are you okay? He asked. The question felt heavier now, different. Evelyn considered it. Really considered it. I left, she said instead. Julian nodded slowly. I figured. A silence settled between them. Familiar, but not easy. Not this time. Can I come in? He asked. Evelyn hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment felt even smaller with him inside. Or maybe it was just the weight of everything that hadn't been said yet. Julian glanced around briefly before turning back to her. You didn't tell him. It wasn't a question. Evelyn shook her head. No. Why? She let out a slow breath. Because he wouldn't have listened. Julian nodded, but something in his expression shifted. Subtle, but there. And now? He asked. Evelyn looked at him, her gaze steady, clear. Now I don't know what happens next. Julian took a step closer. Not too close. Just enough. And what do you want to happen? The question lingered. Heavy. Unavoidable. Evelyn opened her mouth, then closed it again. Because for the first time, this wasn't about escaping Ryan. This was about facing herself. You, she said, finally. The word came out softer than she intended. More uncertain. Julian didn't move. Didn't reach for her. Didn't close the distance. Instead, he shook his head slightly. No. The word hit harder than she expected. Evelyn frowned. What? Julian's voice remained calm, but firm. You didn't leave him for me. The truth of it landed instantly. Sharp. Unavoidable. I didn't say I did, she replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping in. But you're standing here like I'm the answer. Julian said. Evelyn's chest tightened. I don't have an answer, she admitted. Exactly. Silence. But this time, it wasn't comforting. It was confronting. Julian took a small step back, creating space. You needed someone to see you, he continued. I get that. But if you're here because you think I'm going to replace everything you just left. He shook his head again. That's not how this works. Evelyn felt something twist inside her. Not rejection. Not quite. Something deeper. Recognition. I don't want to replace anything, she said quietly. Then don't, Julian replied. Another silence. But this one felt honest. Evelyn looked down at her hands. Empty. For the first time in years. She wasn't holding onto anything. No expectations. No control. No illusions. Just herself. And it was terrifying. Julian moved toward the door. I'm here, he said softly, but I'm not your escape. Evelyn looked up at him. I know. And this time, she meant it. He paused for a moment, then nodded once, and left. The door closed quietly behind him. Evelyn stood in the center of the room, alone, but not invisible, not controlled, not owned, just alone. And maybe, for the first time, that wasn't something to be afraid of. Her phone buzzed again. Ryan. Still calling. Still reaching. Still too late. Evelyn didn't answer. She walked back to the window, sat down, and let the silence settle around her. Not as punishment, not as absence, but as something else entirely. A beginning. Ryan Whitmore had always believed that control was a form of stability, that if everything stayed within his reach, predictable, structured, contained, nothing could truly fall apart. He had built his life that way, his business, his reputation, his marriage. But now, there was a space in his life that refused to be controlled. And it was growing. It had been 3 days. 3 days since Evelyn disappeared. No calls answered, no messages returned, no trace of where she had gone. At first, Ryan told himself it was temporary, a reaction, a phase. She would come back. She always did. But by the second day, something shifted. Not in her. In him. The apartment no longer felt like a place of power. It felt hollow. Too quiet. Too still. Ryan stood in the kitchen, staring at the untouched coffee machine. He hadn't realized how often it had been used, how the sound of it in the morning had become part of something. Routine. Something he never questioned. Until it was gone. He opened his phone again. Scrolled through their messages. Short. Efficient. Detached. He frowned slightly. Had it always been like this? His thumb paused over an older conversation. Months ago. Her messages were longer then. Softer. Full of things he hadn't bothered to respond to. Did you eat? I'll be home early tonight. I miss you. Ryan stared at the last one for a long time. He didn't remember replying. A strange discomfort settled in his chest. Not sharp. Not overwhelming. Just unfamiliar. He locked the phone. Placed it on the counter. Then picked it up again almost immediately. This time, he dialed. It rang. And rang. And then, voicemail. Ryan exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. This is ridiculous, he muttered under his breath. Because in his mind, this wasn't supposed to happen. People didn't just leave him. Not like this. Not without explanation. Not without permission. That thought stopped him. Ryan frowned slightly. His reflection stared back at him from the dark screen of his phone. Permission. The word lingered longer than it should have. Across the city, Evelyn sat on the floor of her small apartment, surrounded by open boxes. Not many, just enough. Clothes folded neatly. A few books. Her laptop resting beside her. It wasn't much, but it was hers. The silence here was different. Not empty. Not demanding. Just present. Evelyn leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes for a moment. Her body felt lighter, but her mind was catching up. Because leaving hadn't solved everything. It had only removed the thing that was suffocating her. Now, she had to face what was left, herself. Her phone buzzed softly beside her. She didn't need to look. She already knew. Ryan. Still calling. Still trying. Still reacting too late. Evelyn opened her eyes slowly. This time, she picked up the phone. Not to answer, just to look. Missed calls. Messages. She opened one. The most recent. Evelyn, this isn't funny. Call me back. Her expression didn't change. Another. Where are you? Then, We need to talk. Evelyn let out a quiet breath. A small, almost invisible smile touched her lips. Now he wanted to talk. She placed the phone back down, face down, not out of anger, not out of revenge, just disinterest. Back in the penthouse, Ryan sat alone in the living room. The city lights flickered beyond the glass, just as they always had. But something about them felt different now, distant, unreachable. He picked up the glass of whiskey beside him, took a sip, then set it down again almost immediately. It didn't taste the same. Nothing did. Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about work, or numbers, or outcomes. He was thinking about her, not as his wife, not as part of his life, but as a person. And that's when it hit him. Not all at once, but in fragments. The way she used to look at him, like he was something more than just a man. The way she used to wait for conversations that never came. The way she slowly stopped asking, stopped reaching, stopped being. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. When did that happen? He murmured. But he already knew the answer. It didn't happen suddenly. It happened every time he chose silence over presence. Every time he dismissed her. Every time he made her feel like she was too much, or not enough. Every time he decided, instead of listening. Ryan leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, control didn't feel like strength. It felt like loss, real loss, irreversible. Across the city, Evelyn stood in front of a mirror. Not the one in the penthouse. Not the one that reflected who she was expected to be. A different one. Smaller, simpler, honest. She looked at herself. Really looked. No perfect lighting. No curated image. No performance. Just her. Evelyn reached up, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. Her expression was calm. Not happy. Not sad. Just aware. "I'm still here," she whispered. The words felt grounding, because for so long, she hadn't been. A knock at the door broke the moment. Evelyn turned. Her heart didn't race this time, didn't react out of instinct. She walked to the door, opened it. Julian stood there, but something was different. Not in him, in her. "You look," he started, then paused. "Different?" Evelyn finished. Julian nodded slightly. She gave a small smile. "I feel different." They stood there for a moment. No rush, no expectation, just space. "I'm not here to complicate things," Julian said quietly. Evelyn shook her head. "You're not." A pause. "I'm just figuring things out," she added. Julian studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Good. No pressure, no assumption, just acknowledgement." And this time, that was enough. Evelyn stepped back slightly, leaving the door open. Not as an invitation, not as a decision, just a possibility. And for the first time, that felt like power, not control. Choice. Back in the penthouse, Ryan sat alone in the dark. The city still glowing outside, unchanged. But inside, everything had already fallen apart. And the worst part, he was only just beginning to understand what he had destroyed. There was no dramatic ending, no final confrontation, no tears spilled across a courtroom floor, no desperate plea that changed everything at the last second. Just time. 2 weeks later, New York moved on. It always did. People forgot quickly in a city that never stopped demanding attention. Stories dissolved into noise, emotions buried beneath deadlines, distractions, survival. But for Evelyn Carter, time didn't erase, it revealed. Her apartment was still small, still temporary, but it no longer felt like a place she was hiding in. It felt like something else now. A beginning. Morning light filtered through thin curtains, softer than the harsh, curated brightness of the penthouse she once called home. Evelyn stood barefoot by the window, a cup of coffee in her hand, fresh this time. She had learned to make it the way she liked, not the way it was expected. There were no missed calls waiting for her anymore. Ryan had stopped, eventually. At first, his silence had felt strange, unnatural, like something unfinished. But then she realized it wasn't silence anymore. It was absence. And absence didn't ask questions, didn't demand answers, didn't pull her back into something she had already left behind. Evelyn took a slow sip of her coffee, her gaze drifting across the city. The same skyline, the same streets, but she wasn't the same. Her phone buzzed softly on the table behind her. She didn't turn immediately, Didn't rush. When she finally glanced at it, it wasn't Ryan. Julian. There's a place upstate. Quiet. You'd like it. A pause. Then another message. No expectations. Just thought of you. Evelyn stared at the screen. Her chest didn't tighten. Her heart didn't race. It was calm. She picked up the phone, read the messages again, then typed slowly. Thank you. She hesitated for a moment, then added, but I think I need to stay here. The reply didn't come immediately, and for once, that didn't bother her. She set the phone down, walked back to the window, because this moment, didn't need to be filled. Across the city, Ryan Whitmore stood in the center of the penthouse. Everything was exactly where it had always been. Perfect. Untouched. But it felt wrong. The silence here hadn't changed. But without Evelyn, it had no shape, no meaning. It was just empty. Ryan loosened his tie, something he rarely did before stepping into the bedroom. The bed was made. The closet still held most of her things, but the space she left behind, that hadn't been filled. He walked to the nightstand, opened the drawer. The ring was still there. He picked it up again, holding it between his fingers like he had done countless times over the past 2 weeks. At first, he had expected something. Anger, regret, a desire to fix things. But now, what he felt was different. Quiet, heavy, final. Ryan sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. For the first time in his life, he had no control over the outcome. No strategy, no leverage, no way to undo what had already been done. And the realization settled in like something permanent. She wasn't coming back, not because she couldn't, but because she chose not to. That distinction, it stayed with him. Because for the first time, Ryan understood what love had never been to him. Not control, not possession, not certainty. Choice. And Evelyn had chosen to walk away without asking, without explaining, without waiting. He let out a slow breath, his grip tightening slightly around the ring. Then, carefully, he placed it back in the drawer, closed it, and for once, he didn't reach for his phone. Evelyn stepped outside later that afternoon. The air was warmer now, the city shifting into early summer. People passed by without noticing her. Cars moved. Voices overlapped. Life continued. She walked without a destination. No urgency. No need to be anywhere specific. A bookstore caught her attention. Small. Quiet. She stepped inside. The scent of paper and ink filled the space, grounding her in a way she hadn't expected. She moved slowly between the shelves, her fingers brushing lightly over the spines. No one recognized her. No one expected anything from her. And for the first time in years, that felt right. She paused in front of a mirror near the back of the store. Not large, not perfect, but clear. Evelyn looked at herself. Really looked. There was no performance in her expression now. No careful adjustment. No silent question asking if she was enough. Just presence. She reached up, touching her reflection lightly. "I'm here," she whispered. And this time, there was no doubt in her voice. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced down. A reply from Julian. "Okay." A pause. "I'm glad you stayed." Evelyn smiled softly. Not because he said the right thing, but because she no longer needed anyone to. She slipped her phone back into her bag, turned away from the mirror, and walked forward. Not toward someone, not away from something. Just forward. The city carried on. Ryan remained where he had always been, surrounded by everything he once believed mattered. Except now, he understood the one thing he couldn't replace. And Evelyn, she didn't look back, because what remained wasn't love, wasn't loss. It was something quieter, stronger, herself.